Hey y'all, this is Ryan from Disruptarian Radio and Clovis Star Media. So I've got a change of plans, change of venues. I've used social media for many years, and we've had some great guests on, and I had a pretty awesome co-host, Pastor Ray Crystal, until he passed away. We had some legalization shows, and we've had live protest on our shows where at one point I actually got arrested, and at that particular protest I challenged a law and got a anti-free speech law changed in Springville, Utah. So I've had a pretty good run at it, but what I'm finding is that social media continuously censors me, shadow bans me, and have blocked my accounts. For many years, I've seen other cannabis activists and other conservatives go through this, but it wasn't really obvious until Donald Trump became president. And now Donald Trump he has set up a website to report this. So if social media has banned you or censored you over your conservative beliefs or whatever else, you can report this to the president, and the president can pull some strings, I'm guessing, to make this problem become known better, if not fixed. So hopefully that happens. Even Sam Harris, who is an atheist, who would be considered probably more liberal, progressive liberal, has started removing himself from social media. He had the third largest Patreon channel, and he just closed it down, losing about $60,000 a month in protest of all of these different social media platforms banning conservatives. And he specifically said that. So it's no longer an illusion. It's no longer something that people can say, oh, it's all in your head. Nobody really likes you anyway. Nobody listens to you. That's a false statement anyway. I've heard that a lot, about conservatives, that, oh, this guy's a wackadoodle, nobody listened to him, this guy's this guy's that. That's why, the platform isn't supporting their media. But for myself, like my website, disruptarian.com, is one of the highest ranked radio stations that I've ever came across. There's a few others. I mean, the Breakfast Club and others, they got higher ranks than me, but I'm like, I don't know, I think I'm 193,000 on Alexa. So out of, 2 or 3 billion websites in the United States, my rank is 193,000. So I'm pretty close to number one comparatively, out of all the billions of websites out there. And I get, roughly, I think it's 600,000, 500,000 visits a month, and of those, 128,000 of those are unique. My Twitter feed currently is getting 7.2 million views a month. That's as of March. I haven't checked the analytics lately, but on Facebook, after all of their recent changes over the last couple years, trying to influence elections and push their progressive politics, my pages, I used to have around 60,000 followers, and I was gaining about 500 a week, and now it's slowing down. So I have probably 67,000 total followers on all of my pages and groups. But that's slowed down significantly. Like, I'm getting about 50 to 100 a month instead of 500 a week like I used to get. And it's because of the shadow banning. And a lot of it is, and I can show that a lot of my content is getting blocked. Even if it's benign content, even if it's not even politically swayed one way or the other. But if I have an opinion about something, or if I share a meme, people can and do report it, or Facebook's algorithms ban it. Something happens where those posts are being removed. And one of my accounts, I have one for personal and one for business, and my business one just got shut down a couple of days ago. I announced a week ago that I'd be leaving Facebook and not posting there anymore, and then 3 days later my account got I don't know if it's banned completely, but it's limited. I can't even log into it right now. They want me to provide identification and all this other bullshit, which I can do, but I'm not even interested. Like, at this point, it's like, whatever, you know? Like, why keep fighting something that's an uphill battle that seems to only give negative results anymore? So, you know, Mark Zuckerberg is an atheist and a very progressive liberal and a Hillary Clinton supporter. And, you know, he's been subpoenaed and called before Congress and had to testify about the bias. Twitter executive, what's her name? She got on the Joe Rogan show, and Tim Pool and Joe Rogan asked her about the bias. You know, they're pretty middle ground. Like, they're not conservative, they're not liberal. Joe Rogan's, you know, pretty much in the middle, I would say. And Tim Pool's probably leaning a little more conservative than he used to, but, you know, he was very progressive, very liberal for a very long time. And now he's kind of in the middle. And they confronted her about it, and there is a lot of conservative bias where conservatives get banned, saying it's hate speech or violent speech or whatever. But then you've got, you know, Antifa groups, which are calling for violence, calling for murder, calling for all kinds of very, you know, sketchy things, and doxing people and all this, and their accounts are left alone for the most part. Maybe a few of them have been censored or banned, but by and large, they get away with it. They don't get any kind of censorship, usually, and the conservatives, even very benign conservatives, get it all the time. And, you know, it's actually quite concerning, only in that, you know, if it was a publisher, like if it was a newspaper, they can choose to publish whatever content they want. But if it's a platform, there's the difference, is that the bias needs to be balanced, you know, or removed if it's a platform. You know, if it's like a public utility, say for example, Comcast started, you know, censoring people and restricting their internet access based on conservative ideology. You know, they're like a public service, right? And that's what Facebook and Twitter and YouTube have claimed to be, as a platform, a public platform. So they're no longer like a publisher. They're not considered a publisher as much as they are now a platform. So if they're a platform, they can no more censor somebody over political speech or reduce their access over political speech than, say, your local internet provider can. But what if your internet provider could? You know, what if Comcast or Quest or Time Warner or whatever started censoring people and removing internet access from people, denying them service if they have a different political ideology? You know, that's where it gets scary. This girl, Soph, she's a teenager, but she does political satire. And they've demonetized her and removed her ability to receive comments. And I thought that was interesting. And what she posted, I found even more concerning, is that Vox, which is a publisher, you know, they have no obligation to be unbiased. They can be as biased as they want. But that they did a story on that kid, Desmond is Amazing, who's a transvestite or a transsexual or whatever he is, transgender kid. I don't know all the names for these anymore. And, you know, he's out, you know, being filmed at gay bars, twerking for gay men who are throwing money at him. And they call him brave and amazing and all this other stuff and promote him. And then this little girl, Soph, who does political satire, who's not selling sex to men, who's not, you know, engaging in risky behavior or pedophilia or any of that. She's just a political satirist, and they're censoring her. And Vox made a big story about how, you know, she's the new alt-right hero or something like that, and just denigrated her, and really gave her a hard time, but promoted Desmond is amazing. It's crazy what's going on in this country. So, the silent majority came out when Donald Trump was elected. Nobody realized how many conservatives there were, how many people actually felt the way I do. And they thought there was no way Donald Trump would win. All of the liberal media mocked him and said there's no way he's ever going to win, and that he's running as a joke and whatever else, and that there's just no possibility of him winning, and that it would be definitely Hillary Clinton. That's what they would say. And then he won. And, a lot of people with a lot of influence support him. So what I'm seeing is I don't want Facebook or any of these social media sites broken up. They've talked about it. There's been talk in Congress about that, about breaking up these social media groups. See, I'm very libertarian. I'm not very authoritarian. I don't want the government to break these social media groups out. And, like they did with Ma Bell, I don't want them to break them up and, give them, two different sides or four different sides of their company, like they did with Ma Bell back in the 80s. I don't want that. I don't want government interference. What I want is these people to work themselves out of business. If they're going to be biased against, 61 million voters, for example, that voted for Donald Trump, if they're going to be biased and work themselves out of a business, by just being an asshole, then, I think there's going to be a vacuum, a void to fill. And these very political and very influential conservatives are going to fill that void. You've got CRTV, they're getting very large now. You've got a lot of people on Discord and 4chan and other places that are gaining a lot of momentum. But I think that, one of these days, a libertarian or a less biased person is going to fill the void of Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and create a new platform that isn't as biased and that accommodates both liberals, progressives or whatever, and conservatives and right-leaning people, however you want to define them. There's not just two sides in this country. I disagree with a lot of conservative people, a lot of right-leaning people on marijuana, I always have, on religion, on things like that. I'm not just lockstep with other conservatives. I'm not just brainless and following the crowd. For a lot of time in my life, the skateboarders, the marijuana people, the activists that I hung out with, maybe 70 to 80% of them were very liberal. And I was very outspoken conservative even then. Like even my radio show, Sensi Life, my co-host, Ray Crystal, was very liberal. And we got along fine for a long time, even though I'm very conservative. And he ended up speaking with my in-law, and my in-law gave him a bunch of feedback that was negative and untrue about me. And so we had a little disagreement, but in the end we made up. And right before he died, he kind of divulged to me what my in-law had said, posing as somebody else, but he kind of saw through it, seeing what was going on in my life. And so we made up, but, we got along fine. I had him as my co-host on my radio show. He had a different opinion than me. I was happy to present it because I like presenting both sides. And one of these days, maybe I'll get another co-host that is on the opposite spectrum of politics than me, so we can bounce ideas around. I like how Joe Rogan does it. He doesn't get people on the show specifically that agree with him. He gets a whole spectrum of people. And that's kind of how I like to do my podcast or my radio shows. So that's why we do Disruptarian Radio, disruptarian.com. That's why we've done clovisstar.com and xcannabis.com and behindZionCurtain.com over the years, is to present an alternative opinion. Maybe one that's not mainstream, maybe one that's not accepted by the listeners that I have, but to present something for them to think about. One of these recent conversations was about atheism and evolution, and I'm not into that. Like, you know, it's not my thing, but I'm willing to entertain it. So when Aaron Ra came to me, he was also sicked on me by my in-law. He confessed that somebody wrote him, and at the same time my in-law was trolling me, and he said that this person had sicked him on me, basically, to talk about evolution. Well, in one of my videos, I had talked about how I don't have enough skin in the game, or I don't have that dog in that fight. I think it's an interesting subject, and I do have a theistic belief, but it's not my fight. Like, evolution is not something that I'm contesting. It's not something that I'm like, oh, no way, not evolution, there's no way. That's not my fight. But I was willing to entertain Aaron Ra's pertinent questions, not all of his silly questions, but his pertinent questions. He's an internet troll, and I know this about him, so I wasn't going to entertain all of his, you know, conspiracy theories. And then he posed a question to me like, what if a woman goes into a dressing room and then somebody else goes in and they leave, and then somebody goes in to find the woman dead 3 hours later? What do you think happened? You know, this was one of his questions that I refused to answer, and that he called me out on Patheos, the theology website. You know, they have different bloggers there, and he called me out with a 9,000 word, basically a book, saying, oh, he refused to answer this question, and that was one of his main points. But I still entertained his other questions about abiogenesis and other things, you know, and I gave him resources like Dr. James Torr, who lives in Texas, just like Aaron Ra does, and has invited atheists to explain evolution to him. You know, he's a microbiologist, chemical engineer. He makes molecules ab initio, you know, from scratch. And Dr. James Torr is the guy to talk to, and he's invited atheists to explain this to him, or evolutionists to explain this to him. And Aaron Ra refuses. So I took up the reins, and then he challenged me to a debate, and I accepted, but I said, we need a moderator. I'm not going to do one of these hack job, you know, hit pieces that you do, one of these little trolling pieces with this ambush journalism that you do. Like, he gets the most random homeless people on the street to talk about Christianity, and then he's like, see, they're retarded, you know. But I wasn't going to do that. I said, if we're going to have a debate, we're going to have a moderator. And when I said that, he backed out. But, you know, I'm still welcoming that. If he wants to do a real debate with me, I'm willing to do it. You know, we can do it on my show. I actually proposed an atheist to moderate it. There's a guy on Blog Talk Radio who's an atheist, who I've been on his show several times as a guest. And I said he'll moderate it for us. And he leans more towards your persuasion than mine. So, you know, let's talk about it. And he refused. So that's the kind of thing I want to do. I want to continue to open up dialogue. My daughter, you know, I have kids that at least one of them is leaning more progressive. And she's embarrassed about my conservative beliefs. And I tried to talk to her about it, and she's like, I don't want to talk about it. Which is okay, but, you know, I'm glad that I'm making these videos for the occasion of later, when she grows up, and maybe she'll listen to what I have to say then. You know, I know she's a teenager now, and it's hard to pay attention to your parents because you think they're idiots when you're a teenager. Most kids do. But maybe when she grows up, she'll listen to my perspective on this, and maybe listen to some of the radio shows and the guests I've had on, and realize that, you know, I am not as right-leaning as she thinks I am, and maybe we agree on a bunch of things that she didn't know we agreed on. You know, I hope that's the case. But these videos are important to me. I'll continue to do them. And that's one of the reasons why. And also, I look at the big picture. I look at 50 years in the future, 100 years in the future. I look at the world that my great-great-great-grandchildren are going to grow up in. And, you know, I want to at least try to guide it in the right direction. I don't want them to be in a tyrannical, dystopian society. I don't want them to live in a 1984 society. I want them to have freedom and liberty and, you know, riches and blessings and, you know, a wealth of life experience. I don't want them to be in a cage. you know? And that's kind of where things are heading. So that's why I do these videos. Thanks for tuning in. Like I said, I'm off Facebook, at least for the time being, probably permanently. And I'm looking to help other people start, you know, more relative social media platforms. If somebody wants to help me with a platform, I have things like filmcraze.com to kind of replace YouTube, and I have my radio shows, and maybe I'll start a forum somewhere where people can share ideas, and just put another option out there. That's my goal. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.